Hi folks, it's Chet from Tag Along with Chet, and welcome to another episode. This time it'll be episode 3, and there's been a bit of a name change. It's no longer Hangar Talk. Just stand by and I'll give you the details. Okay, so here we go. Our name for this series has changed, and I have to thank my cousin out in Europe for giving me this suggestion. Actually, it was I thought it was quite unique. She recommended a name change because I got so confused with the name initially on episode 2, where I had it all screwed up. I had about 3 different names I think I came up with, and I finally got it right. But anyway, what I've done is I've changed all the names on the playlist and also on the series now, or on the episodes. So it's going to be known as Hangar Chet-Chat. Now that sounds like a bit of a mouthful, but I thought it was kind of unique because it was like chit-chat. So she came up with Chet-Chat, which I thought was really neat. So it's Hangar Chet-Chat. So this is episode 3 of Hangar Chet-Chat. I think I got that one right. Anyway, thanks again for that name change, Celine, who just happens to live out in Holland, which I have visited many times, but when I was with the airlines, as a matter of fact, I used to go there sometimes twice a month, but I don't know, I just kind of got away from the traveling end of it. So anyway, we'll leave that for some other time. Anyway, let's get back to the what we have on hand here. The airplane stayed in Montreal at Ile-Perrot for a bit. It wasn't out there that long because I used to commute with it quite a bit from Montreal to Toronto, or to Milton or Burlington Air Park and back again. But of course, there's always weather issues, as you heard in the last episode. So what I eventually did is I flew it back down to Burlington, and I basically had it based there, had it tied down there. Now, when I bought it, it was white and red and black, pretty ugly color, and it needed some work. So during the time that I had it there, the aircraft was gradually worked on. I had a new muffler system put on. It was a Cessna 150 muffler system, which gave it a lot better heat in the cabin. It had better carb heat as well. And it wasn't as noisy, because I think originally what was on there wasn't really a muffler. It was they were straight stacks, almost like the Luscombe had. So it was kind of noisy. So it made it a lot smoother, nice muffled sound with this new Cessna 150 muffler system, which was a mod that you could do in those days. Also, I had the carburetor was overhauled for one reason or another. I can't remember why. I think I was having some issues with the carburetor. I also had a new radio installed, which was an Escort 110, which to me was the top of the line radio, for me anyway, because it had a VOR. And it had 110 different frequencies on it, I think it was. Yeah, it was a Narco Escort 110. So that was during 1970, oh geez, in the early 70s, 71, something like that. Anyway, what happened eventually is they closed the base for Canadian Pacific. That's CP Air, I think they renamed it to, in around 71, 72 in there. So they closed the base in Montreal. Now we had 2 bases in Canada. One was at that time in Montreal, and the other one was in Vancouver, where I originally came from, or where I came from as a position from an assistant dispatcher to an assistant dispatcher in Montreal. And we moved, and it was a company move, so bang, they moved us lock, stock, and barrel to new facilities at the administration building in Toronto. Now, if you remember Toronto originally, it had, the idea was to have 3 terminals, and they were all these terminals that were sort of round with a parking lot right in the middle, which went up about, I don't know, 7, 8 floors. And that was right in the middle. It was a unique idea, but they only managed to build one terminal. And then there was an administration building on the, which was supposed to be in the center of all these 3 terminals. Like I said, only one was built, but we were in the administration building, and I think we were on either the 2nd or 3rd floor, and we were overlooking the ramp, the east side, I think it was. Yeah, the east side ramp. But anyway, the whole terminal we could see from our windows there, because we were right in the corner. And then eventually, I think about a year later, I became a dispatcher there. Anyway, that's another story. But during that time, I obviously had the aircraft at Burlington Air Park. The airplane, at some point, I think it was during the winter or just prior to the winter, I had it overhauled. I mean, totally. I stripped it. Now, mind you, this was all done under the watchful eye of a mechanic, and so I stripped it, fixed whatever I could. I went inside and I sprayed all this anti-corrosion liquid in the belly and in the tail end of the aircraft. And by the time it came out, I had Daytona blue color and white. And man, it was a good-looking Cessna 140 then. I was real happy with it. Well, now, of course, when I bought it, it came with skis. And the skis, the bottoms were just totally wrecked. They were pretty well worn out. So I had them redone, and we put wider base on it. I think they were originally about, I don't know, 6 inches, and I think they came out to be about 11 or 9, 10 or 11 inches wide on the bottom. So they had wide bottom skis, which made it a lot easier on the snow, so you didn't sink as far. We would take our trips up north. Now, I can tell you about this trip going up north, but what I'll do is I'll link you to an 8mm movie that I also took during one of these trips, and I'll just link it up there, and you'll see this trip going up north in a Cessna 140. And that was some experience, folks, I'll tell you. That took place in... let's see, we left Burlington Air Park on February the 2nd. Now, we started doing this as a yearly thing. It was about every first or second, yeah, it was the second Saturday or first Saturday in February we would leave. And this happened to be February the 2nd, 1974. And I had never been on skis before. Yeah, once. And that was the day before when I kind of checked myself out, and I was up for 30 minutes, and I did a few touch and goes, and I didn't think much of it. And anyway, so we blasted on up north, and our first point of for refueling was at Perry Sound. Now, Perry Sound was sort of an inlet off of one of the lakes up north, and it it was actually a float plane base, but in the winter a lot of ski guys would use it, and we had a runway, and the runway went right in the inlet into Perry Sound, the town, and behind it there was a huge railway track, one of these trestle ones. And so it was a one-way strip, because if you had to come in from the, I guess it would have been the northeast, you'd have to come over that railway trestle and then dive for it and the trouble was the runway went out into open water. There was a stream or I guess a river or something out further up, and it would break all the ice up. So the runway was only so long on ice, and then it would just kind of start becoming chunks of ice and eventually open water. So we always used to come in from the southwest. Tailwind or not, that's the way you'd come, and you just, yeah, that's what you do. But the trouble was, that day we had, Jeez, I remember came in rather hot. All the other guys had already landed, and I don't know why I was one of the latter ones, or maybe I wasn't, but I came in, and I landed, and the other guys were already parked way out in where the float planes were usually parked by the docks. And so here I come in on my first landing, and it was on sheer ice. And I'd never landed on ice. I'd landed on snow, and landing on ice was totally different. This is a whole learning experience for me now. So I came in and I landed. Now, flaps on a Cessna 140 are usually, well, they're just there for training aid to say you got flaps, but they don't do much as far as slowing you down. But I used them anyway, and as I got down, I probably landed a little bit too fast, and I just kept on going and going and going and going. And I was getting closer and closer to the dock area where all the airplanes were parked. And I thought, this damn thing ain't going to stop. So I shut down the engine, and nothing happened. I still kept on sliding. Now you got to remember, this is sheer ice that I'm on, and so I thought, well, this thing, it's not going to stop in time. So I got out, and it didn't matter which way you turned the rudder, because it was a tailwind, and I don't know, it just kept on going basically in a straight direction. I couldn't get the thing turned around at all. And so I thought, well, this thing's I better do something. So I got out of the airplane. The airplane's still moving, mind you, and it was moving, I don't know how fast. It seemed fast to me, but I opened up the door, popped out, stood on the ski, and there I was in an airplane, or outside the airplane, with the airplane still moving. And I went out and I grabbed the strut, and I moved out as far as I could, and I just stood there, and I basically held the strut just kind of like this, with my feet forward, and eventually the aircraft started turning. And eventually I got it turned all the way around the other way, and well, it started skidding a little bit on the side, and then turned around the other way, and it finally came to a stop. Now all these guys that were already in there, they were laughing their heads off. They thought this was just hilarious. I was scared anyway. That's how I learned how to land on ice. So after that, it became a little, well, a lot better. It didn't take much to learn. It was a fast learning day for me. Anyway, I got the airplane. I just basically, I could shove it down to where the other aircrafts were parked, and we fueled up, and then we bombed off up to a cottage, which belonged to a friend of mine, which was on Lake Wilson. Now that was near Temagami, just a little bit south of Temagami, and I think it was Lake Wilson, or Wilson Lake, I think it was, or yeah, and he called it Fox Island where he was on. He had an island on the lake, and the only way you could get there was either in the summer, well, you could swim there, I guess. It was a bit of a hike, but anyway, usually he had a boat, and in the winter, of course, it was just, you could walk you could walk there on the ice, but we all flew up there. Now there was, usually when we went up there, there would be, oh crap, I think that year we had maybe 7, 8 airplanes. And we would all go in this cottage that he had. And it was great. The chap who owned it, he's passed away now, super guy. And I was good friends with him. And he passed away a couple of years, well, probably 3 years ago. He was well into his 80s. Maybe even into his 90s. But anyway, we used to go up there, like I said, every summer or every winter, and enjoy ourselves up there. This particular year, we decided to go up north further. We were going to go up to Moosonee. Now, that particular year, we didn't quite make it. There was another chap along with us who, can't remember, Jim, I think his name was, and he had a Ronca. I can't remember what it was. An Aranca, no, it wasn't an Hangar Champ. It was a, anyway, it doesn't matter. It was another single engine. It was an all fabric aircraft. And we we were heading up, and we thought, well, we just keep on trucking, but it started getting dark, and we thought, geez, this is not good, you know. It's and in those days, I don't know what it was. We really didn't think ahead. I don't know. Well, it was cold. It was the temperatures were well below. Well, up there they were usually at least -15, -20, and once it got down to around -20, well, we didn't bother flying anymore because we obviously we preheated the aircraft anyway overnight. That's another thing I'll tell you about how we did that. Anyway, I'll tell you now how we did that. What we did is we had Coleman or Tonka tent heaters. Now these things, well, I'll tell you what they look like. I've got one right here. I just happen to have it on here because it's under my desk here, but it looks like this. Let me see if I can get it there. They look like this. This is it looks quite big here, but that's what the thing looked like. Oh, no, it just went out because I turned it. It shuts off automatically. But basically, this is what they look like this. Now, they didn't have a propane tank like this one does, but they had a white, I think it was white gas they had in them. And the way you would light them is the white gas would have to go to that area that turns red. And so you turn the thing, it was a tank, it was about this big, I guess. And it had the tank in the bottom, and you'd have that white gas in it. And you turn the thing upside down, and you get the wick area wet. That's the area that turned red after you lit it. Anyway, you get that soaked. You move it away from your airplane. You'd get a match, and you'd throw this match on it, and the thing would just go whoosh, and this flame probably a couple of feet high off of it, and then gradually it would burn that particular area that got nice and red, and it glowed like crazy. And then you put after that was all done, you put the cover back on it, click back on it. It was a protective covering, and it just so happened that the one I had, which was a Tonka tent heater, it fit very nicely in the cowling on the engine mount. So you pop open the cowling, and you take this thing and you'd stick it in there, and then you just close everything up, and you'd put your winter covering on the engine, and that's it. And that thing would just burn all night like that. And it got cold out there. I'm sure sometimes it would get down to -30, and then as the day came, the temperatures would go up, obviously, but if it was really cold, we wouldn't fly anyway. But it kept the engines warm. And in the morning, the steam, you could see the steam coming out from around the propeller area where you had the covering. And those days we didn't have all these fancy engine covers. Well, at least I didn't. They were pretty expensive. I couldn't afford them. So I just covered it up with an old sleeping bag and a tarp or something, from what I can recall. And it seemed to work. And that engine, you could take that prop and just turn it through, and there was no problem. The only problem that you did have is the battery in a Cessna 140 was behind the baggage compartment, behind the back, behind your seat. So they got cold. So I never really used the electric start on mine. We normally just started it by turning the prop, and that was common because it really drained the battery when you use that. And then as the day progressed, of course, for your next start, it would be fine because everything kind of got warmed up. And the cabin in the Cessna 140 was actually quite comfortable. Anyway, we thought we were going to head up to Moosonee. So we packed our bags up and got out of the cabin, and off we went. And as we were going up there, it started getting dark, as I mentioned earlier. I got a little off track here, folks, but I do that quite a bit. Anyway, a friend of the chap, that Jim, I think his name was, he said, well, look, I got a brother, or I think his sister and his brother-in-law lived up in Matheson. So he said, that's en route, so what we'll do is we'll stop in Matheson on, I think it was the Black River. And they said, we'll just land there, and then we'll stay overnight over at my brother-in-law's and sister's place, which was just outside of town. And the town there in Matheson wasn't that large at that time. Anyway, we parked on the Black River, right behind the hospital. There was a little inlet, and we parked the airplanes all there. And so the next day, we actually had a good time there. And next day we got out there and we had our engines all preheated and everything. So off we went, and I blasted off, and it was cold. It was so cold. Let me tell you how cold it was. I got to emphasize this because I look at it now and I think, geez, I don't know. We learned a lot. Anyway, we got out of got into our airplane, and first one guy took off, another guy, and I remember taking off. It was cold enough that I was leaving a contrail out of my exhaust stacks, and I think I had 2 of them, one on each side. Anyway, it looked very impressive. You looked like a mini jet taking off, or a mini jet at altitude, or some aircraft at 30 some odd thousand feet leaving a contrail behind. But that's how cold it was. So anyway, off we went. And then we just kind of circled and waited for everybody to get in a group. And Jim took off, and he got partway down the river, obviously on the ice, on skis, and all of a sudden he quit. It just stopped. And we circled around. We thought, oh, maybe he's got a little bit of a problem. He'll check it out. Anyway, he got out. Anyway, we all came back down and landed. We found out that he blew a jug. So I guess it just went boom, and one of his 4 cylinders gone. So now we had a problem. So we thought, well, we're gonna have to fix this. Now, fortunately, one of the guys we had with us, his name was Vic. Now Vic, I've known Vic for years because Vic was the maintenance guy at Burlington Air Park at that time, and he was the one that did all the maintenance on my airplane as well. So Vic and I knew each other for quite for I don't know, about 20 years at least. Anyway, he was with us, and he was in a Cub. And you'll see this on the video. You'll see Vic. The registration of the Cub was SDX, I believe. It was a red and white at that time. And he had a lot of contacts up in that neck of the woods. So him and Jim took off in his Cub, in Vic's Cub, and they went to someplace in Quebec. The guy had a barn full of old engine parts, and anyway, he blasted off out there with Jim, and so we were kind of left with taking the engine apart. Now, the people in Matheson were just great. I remember they had a home hardware store there, and we're walking downtown. We were first going to get some breakfast, and as we were walking downtown, we thought, well, geez, we're going to need some tools, and there was some of the tools we didn't have, or some of the wrenches we didn't have. So we went into home hardware out there, and we said, well, blah, blah, blah. And they knew who we were. Everybody knew we were there. And so the guy said, well, what do you guys need? And we said, well, we need this, this, this. And the guy said, well, here, just go and just take what you need. And so, well, how much is that going to cost us? And the guy said, well, no, just go use them. And he says, when you're through with them, bring them back. So we went out there collecting these open-end wrenches and torque wrenches. I can't remember what all we took out of there. And bang, out of this home hardware store we went, and on the ice. And so Joe and I, we started taking the cylinder off that was affected. So they had to take the cowling off. And anyway, make a long story short, because this is getting a bit too long already. That afternoon, it was already getting late. You could see the long shadows already in the snow. Vic and Joe came, or not Vic and Joe, but Vic and Jim came back in the Cub, and they had the what they needed. So I don't know whether it was I think it was just I don't know if it was cylinder and the jug, but anyway, they and Joe and I had already removed everything from the engine so we could get a start on it, but obviously that night we couldn't do it, so we had to wait till the next morning. So the next morning, and I remember I got it noted down here because I looked at in my logbook. I still have it here, and the date was February the 7th. February the 7th. And it says here, February the 7th, we actually left Matheson and went back to Temagami over to Wilson Lake because, well, we couldn't go anywhere after that. It took too long. But anyway, we spent another night in Matheson, and surface outside air temperature on my aircraft read minus 47 degrees Fahrenheit, and that was at 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, minus 47 degrees Fahrenheit is the same in centigrade just about. I think it's, you know, minus 40 centigrade, minus 40 Fahrenheit is where they meet. But anyway, that's what it was. And it was cold. It was so cold. And that's when we had, when we were going to do the engine change. Now, it just so happened that Jim's brother-in-law, or brother, I'm not sure, worked for Ontario Hydro. And he had access to a propane bottle and a blowtorch and some tarps, which we got out of the back of his truck. And you'll see on the video where we tarped the engine. We had the propane tank with a blowtorch. The blowtorch we had in a drum. We had it blowing into a drum, the flame. And that's how we heated the engine. And we did the engine maintenance work on the engine, and we got it all working again. So then after we got that working, I don't know if we left the next day. Was it the next day? Let me just see here. No, we actually left that same day. We got the whole problem rectified there in the morning, and I guess we left in the afternoon. Then we flew back to Temagami to Joe's cottage. And yeah, and we did some ice fishing while we were down there. We stayed in Joe's cottage for a bit longer. Anyway, so that's it, folks. Like I said, I can keep on blabbing out here, but we're not going to do that. I'm going to continue this on my next one. So this will be the end of episode 3 of Hangar Chet-Chat. So that's it. If you haven't subscribed, folks, hit that subscribe button. It's in the bottom right hand of your screen. Just click on it, and my face is probably there. Just click on the face and it'll say subscribe. And there's also a little bell that comes up. Click on the bell and it'll give you an idea when I upload another video. So thanks again for watching, folks. We'll see you I guess episode 4 when I get some time to do that. So have a good day, and we'll see you later. Bye for now.